You're listening to the RMPodcast, the official podcast of Red Moon Productions. Here are your hosts, Brandon Davidson, Keith Cheatham, and Sean Sebastian. Enjoy.
Welcome to another episode of, oh my gosh, the hand. There's a hand on the table. What's going on?
That's Thing.
It's creepy crawly season. It's back. It is back.
It's Thing.
Live every single Tuesday night right here. Oh, it's touching Keith. It's just
shoulder.
It's just touching. He's just a friend. He's just really friendly.
That's how he is in the movie.
Yeah, that's it.
When he taps on. Is it the second one where?
Let me do intros first.
Yeah.
Live every single Tuesday night right here on all your favorite social media accounts at 9 p.m. You can catch the audio version downloadable on Thursdays at midnight. I'm one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host, Sean Sebastian, and Keith Cheatham. Actually, that looks legit.
That's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool looking. I kind of dig it. Oh, no.
There we go.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. If it could just stay up there, you could wear that for the Halloween episode.
Rip.
Uh-oh, your mic came unplugged. I think, yeah.
Uh-oh.
There you go.
When I adjusted it, you're right. Got a little loose. Yeah, I think it would stay because the way it's sitting on the headphones, like it's actually kind of like that perfectly, like kind of got it locked on there.
And
Maybe
then
I'll
it's
have
going
to print some more.
There you,
Like, I mean, if I really like moved my head around real hard, it'd
actually,
fall off,
if you
but
could
it's-
print some, well, I don't know how, I don't want to like take up all of
I could
your-
print them like child-size hands too. It's really creepy.
That'd
It's
be,
like,
kinda-
that'd be super
I
creepy.
made one
creepy.
for Sawyer.
It'd be like,
that
kid-sized
looks
hand.
really good though.
Yeah, it does.
Sean,
That's a 3D printed hand.
yeah, Sean made that.
Yeah,
That's
I
insane.
Painted it. Painted
Yeah.
his fingernails green and
All of these decorations on the table that
It's
are
all-
adorning our
all
studio
3D
this year.
printed. I have tombstones for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah, that's perfect.
The
The pumpkins.
Little
pumpkin
pumpkins.
squash.
I like the little
pumpkins,
ghosts over here. These
Little
are
spooky
nice.
ghost.
That's
I like
a-
spooky ghost.
What? So wait, is it just hand or does it have like a name in
Thing.
Thing?
That's
It's
the
thing.
yeah.
Okay,
That's
all
what
right.
I said
Cousin
that, yeah.
it is
That's
is
hair
that-
thing, yeah.
Okay,
Thing, yeah.
that's right. But yeah, the Thing is that what
Just
it's
Thing,
modeled
just
after?
Thing.
Just Thing.
Just Thing.
Yeah, it is.
It was originally Thing in the box because it was always in a wooden box. But then as technology got better, they didn't have to have a guy under a table putting his hand out of the box. So then it evolved into Just Thing.
I say the claymation technology, man, it
Yeah.
just took off. It did a world of wonders for Hollywood. I'm telling you. But no, we got. Thank you, Sean, for 3D printing those, and maybe for Halloween we could get some like different kind of hats or something weird or kooky that we can wear.
Yeah.
We did
We
the
did
masks
yeah.
last year.
I still have those masks,
Yeah.
but I mean, they'd be the same ones.
Yeah.
If we
And
could-
we're not gonna look. Bob Iger's not gonna attack me this year. Last year was a little special. I mean, he could.
He could.
You never know with
we
him.
will actually, since Halloween's not on a Tuesday this year, we will have a show.
Right.
So
But last year, I got kidnapped by Bob Iger.
Bobby didn't like all those reviews that we had been doing.
No.
Bobby.
Little Bobby was a
Bobby
little
Iger.
upset. He was upset,
This is
and he
amazing
was.
coffee, by the way.
It's freaking good. I'm telling you.
I tell
I
you.
hadn't had any of
like
it
crack.
that yet.
Hey,
And
we'll
I mean,
give him a
it's great.
shout out.
Yeah,
Who,
do it.
I actually forgot the name.
Oh.
Cedar Grove
Coffee
Cedar Grove Coffee down there in Bullitt County.
Gosh.
That's right.
on Cedar Grove Road.
Wow.
Who'd have thought?
Imagine that. Cedar Grove Coffee on Cedar Grove Road.
They know how to roast some fantastic beans.
And really, we were talking about it just before we cut on the mics. The price per pound is actually not bad. I mean, you pay for it
Not
in
at
bulk
all.
up
I
front.
thought it was going to be. I thought it sounded expensive, but then when I started adding up how much I was paying for coffee and how much other people I know, I was
Yeah.
like, that's not bad at all.
And I will say, for me, and I probably actually make a little too much in the morning than I actually drink, just because I always want to make sure if I want that extra cup, I've got enough.
Yeah.
But I no doubt, I go through, it takes me 2 months to get through a 5-pound bag.
Yeah.
So I'm like, if it lasts me for 2 months,
Yeah.
and
that's $30 a month.
that's not bad.
Dirt cheap. Like, I mean, that's not dirt cheap, but compared to like some of the coffee beans I've bought per pound, like that is not bad price
and
at all.
I equate it to the fact that because I got the Technivorum last year, I've had it for a full year now, and I literally use that instead of going out and getting coffee at Starbucks or Heine Brothers or whatever.
Be
so
honest.
for me, it saves a lot of money in terms of paying $3-4 for a cup of black coffee at a
It's going to be hard to talk about anything
Coffee
else.
house.
Every time I take a drink, I just want to be
so good. Look,
you know what I'm saying? No, this is like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to talk about the movies.
The first thing I noticed when I opened my bag of coffee
that whiff
was, well, the smell, yes, but just the coffee beans themselves, they're brown. Every other coffee bean I've ever opened is black and oily.
Yes.
Like if you actually pick it up and put it in your hands, like it leaves oil in your hands.
because
This coffee does not do that. It is
There's gotta
brown
be
and
it's something about the shelf life with those. Like they probably coat it in something so
I
it
don't
can
know.
stay
I
longer.
don't know so much about that. I just think because they're mass roasted, like they just over roast them in a way.
Yeah.
Like, and
they're dark.
Yeah.
Like this is just a beautiful. Even when you pour the coffee, you can see
It's a nice.
it's like an amber brown color, where it's not just black.
It's like a
motor
very
oil.
dark tea almost.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
Honestly,
delicious.
it makes me think of like real maple syrup.
Damn.
Because like real maple syrup has that amber color.
I'm just
He's
I'm just
enjoying it.
saying, like I
very good.
can't talk about the movie. Every time
Yeah,
I take
screw
a
the
sip, I'm
movie.
gonna be like, "This is good." I feel like I can't think of the movie or a show. I've seen something where like somebody's eating and every time he takes a bite, he's like, "This is amazing." It's like that's me with this
It's
coffee.
like freaking. What about Bob when he's like
Yes.
fried chicken? All right.
All right.
What movie were we reviewing? I don't even know.
It's kind of
Two.
forgettable.
We have 2 reviews.
Oh yeah, we
Yeah.
didn't even mention it
It's
last week.
Halloween.
It's Halloween.
We didn't know our theme.
We didn't know our theme. We picked our theme. We teased you with what theme we were gonna pick, and
Yeah.
we didn't have one, so we came up with it.
It's kind of related to that.
having a hand kind of fits.
Well, it will stand up like that. That's
Oh
perfect.
yeah. Oh, it's well balanced.
That's
awesome.
perfect. Yeah.
And then you can have it hold stuff.
It'll hold stuff.
You put like a
Oh,
little,
Sean's tested.
Yeah.
put a
this.
little jack-o'-lantern in
Yeah.
there. That'd be cool.
Well, will you hold that little pumpkin? Has he got that little pumpkin there?
You might. So I had that jack-o'-lantern.
That
we
would-
had,
well-
You have to get it.
it's-
You have to get
yeah.
it in the right spot.
Oh my gosh, it will.
Yeah, if you get it in the right spot, it will.
Maybe we'll have it.
Plus,
him
this
holding-
table's not flat, so
Yeah.
that's part of the issue. But
We may have him hold something after we get to the review.
Oh,
Oh no!
He's drunk.
We've already
He's
screwed
drunk.
up.
Well, are we going to start with the new movie or the Halloween review?
Actually, we're not going to make people wait. The big movie on the block, if you want to call it that, for this week was Joker, Folie, Deux. We do have a review. We've seen it.
I guess
Are we sticking with the main crowd and all of the naysayers out there who
Yeah, there's been a lot of negativity around this movie.
say they gave it, a rotten score on Rotten Tomatoes? The popcorn bucket's tipped over. They've got a cinema score of D.
Man.
Worse than Morbius.
People left the
Worse than
theaters.
Morbius.
Some of them.
That's
Yeah.
that's sad.
And Madam Web. Who
Yeah,
would
Madam
have
Web
thought?
made more money. And it has a better score.
Morbius made more money in its opening weekend than this movie.
Oh, this
and had
movie's
a higher
bo-
score.
that's the saddest thing is like you say biggest movie. I guess it's the most prominent movie, but as far as box office goes, it's a blunder. I mean, 200 million is the budget, and it's done what 40? Is it done even that much?
I
think
don't
it-
think it's done that.
I thought it cracked 40. I know it broke 100 million total in the global box office, but I know they said it had to be 450 million total.
I thought it was
for
pretty
it to
low
break
domestically.
even.
Oh yeah. You usually have to do double the budget to break.
And I want to say they said it was either 40 or 50 million, but it did not. It was not something at all that.
37.8.
Oh wow! So under
So
40
right
million.
under 40. Okay.
Wow, that's abysmal.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, no,
That's
for
abysmal.
sure. Yeah.
So, but here's the thing: all of that could literally mean nothing if the movie is good. So where do we stand? Well, without further ado, here is our review of Joker.
Without
Folie Deux.
Some men just want to watch the world burn. A fantastic line of dialogue from a fantastic film that understood who the Joker is as a character. You either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Another much more quoted line from the same movie. Both of these lines apply to Todd Phillips, director of Joker, the critically acclaimed box office juggernaut that served as a Scorsese-esque crime drama where once a hero stood. Phillips has seemingly embraced villainy as Joker, Folie, Deux, the sequel to the 2019 film, makes a solid case that Phillips wished nothing more than to leave Joker as a standalone film, but decided if a sequel must be made, he'd torch everything to ensure no more would exist after. Once again starring Joaquin Phoenix as Arthur Fleck, the film's titular Joker, and bringing on board Lady Gaga as Harley Quinn, after an admittedly well-made animated short in the vein of classic Warner Brothers cartoons, the film opens upon an incarcerated Arthur Fleck, and focuses entirely on his trial as his attorney attempts an insanity plea, stating that Arthur suffers from split personalities, Arthur being one and Joker the other. Harley, who has become obsessed with Joker, stands by his side, though her motivations aren't what fans of the comic books would expect. True to the Folie à Deux theme of shared psychosis, the film parallels Harley and Joker's madness, highlighted by the film's musical elements, as the characters' song and dance numbers are always either soft singing to each other or entirely in Arthur's mind. Phillips' sequel, however, is milquetoast and uninspired, and actively dismantles everything that made the first one great. As mentioned before, Harley's motivations, while mostly unclear, make her out to be the manipulator in this relationship with Fleck, something that completely changes the tone and dynamic of the characters in the comic. Though what her end goal was or is, or if this manipulation was entirely fabricated in Arthur's paranoid mind, is never clear. Arthur himself goes backwards in character development, becoming the spineless, sniveling character from the first film, who only gains a backbone when donning the Joker makeup. While not entirely fond of retreading the same ground, I still thought some of this character development in this film could have worked as a kind of extended origin piggybacking off of the original movie. But it's clear by the shocking ending Phillips created that this was never the intent, and there's a clear-cut reason why Arthur's character development went backwards. It's a definite choice made by Todd Phillips, and viewers will have to decide for themselves how they feel about the end. I will say for me, though, it felt like a complete slap in the face to the first movie, and even the beginning of this film. From a technical aspect, Folie à Deux is well made if uninspired. The acting and dialogue are top-notch, with some solid visual cues throughout the film, such as scenes shown in the trailer of Gaga drawing a smile on the glass divider, as Phoenix slides into place donning the Joker grin. This isn't the only artistic nod, and many are done well, though some, such as Harvey Dent's final scene in the courtroom alluding to his future as Two-Face, being too on the nose. Set designs are fine, though I felt this movie's portrayal of Gotham to be the most uninspired as well. In most movies, Gotham itself feels like a living, breathing character that adds to the mythos. In this, it's just another grungy New York substitute. Most egregious amongst the things that make the film lackluster was the minimalistic, paltry attempt at being a musical. A decision that intrigued many fans of the first film while also bringing ire to many others. Knowing it was such a divisive decision, Phillips doesn't embrace the movie being a musical, and instead of going all in, the musical set pieces are also mediocre, adding nothing to the overall narrative. Joker Folie à Deux feels like a jumbled mess. It's a competently made, if not milquetoast courtroom drama about a man named Arthur Fleck at best. Add in the fact that it's banking off the name of a major fan-favorite comic book villain, the Joker, and as a Joker film, it fails entirely. I give Joker Folie à Deux 2 out of 4 stars.
Well, okay.
Oh, wow.
So is this, yeah, I was going to say 2 out of 4 stars.
Yeah.
That is not, I mean, again, we've talked about this. 2 is right in the middle of the road. Is this a bad 2, a good 2?
It's not a good 2.
That's
I kind of, it's weird. I agree with everything you said in the review, and I landed in the same score. And the only reason I feel like I'm being that generous is because as far as production quality goes, and as far as, you know, acting even, I think both Lady Gaga and Joaquin Phoenix do a tremendous job with, I mean, whether they're to blame for the story that unfolds and what we got, and the you know, horrid mess that the story is, you know, and the plot is throughout the whole film. I mean, I blame them as well as, you know, with Todd Phillips. But as far as everything else goes, I mean, it was a top-tier production, and that's the only positive thing I can say about it.
Yep.
Even you alluded to it in the review, the set pieces with the musical numbers were lackluster. Much of it was spoken, not sung. It was they seemed tepid at best with, we're going to throw in this kind of homage to classic Broadway, like typical cliche set pieces, but then they do nothing spectacular with it. The one scene that I'll give them a little bit of leeway on, and I'll say that it was actually good and intrigued me, was the mocking the 70s, Sonny and Cher aspect, where they walk out of
funny.
and the actual banter, and it was early on, the actual banter they had back and forth played more into the roles of before they really knew each other and before Joaquin was hook, line, and sinker on, attached to Harley, and he was kind of like, no, what am I getting out of this? Yeah. And of course, there is no obscurity in terms of the way the scenes are played out in the film. They're very much like either in his head or just a flicker of like a moment or a thought, or maybe setting up a scene of describing to you their relationship, like him and Harley Quinn's relationship.
Yeah.
They're not supposed to be literal in any sense of the word. But it's like, for that to be the sake of having those elements, they don't add.
No.
Yeah.
They don't add to the story. The story overall is pretty. It's not only regressive, as you say, in the based on what we know from the first movie. It's just boring.
Yeah.
Like, there were times I zoned out in this movie because there wasn't anything that really pulled me forward, and it was just like there was no meat on the bone.
No, I agree. Like, I give it the 2 because I think, again, from a technical aspect, like most of it's well made. But and there are certain scenes like the one you mentioned, and like some with Walking. There's certain scenes that I felt like were pretty good. Like, again, with acting and dialogue, and it's like you can get a few of those throughout the movie. Where like, oh, this is really good, but then how it connects to the overall film, just the story overall is like you said, dull and a slap in the face of fans of the first, and of I think anybody who's a fan of the Joker character. And I just, even like you said, as the musical, like, not every musical does this, but I feel like most good musicals, the songs advance the story.
Yes.
Like they're part of the plot. They're not just there as a song. This, it's not that like the songs didn't fit the plot. They did, but the plot had already been progressed. Like, you already had the exposition, and then there's just this extra random song that doesn't further the plot in any way. It's just there because thematically it relates to the moment.
Yeah, you're not really seeing the film play out in those musical numbers.
Yes. Yeah.
It's just there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sean, what'd you give it?
I gave it 1.5.
Okay.
I think that's fair.
I actually I didn't like it at all. I agree completely with the technical aspect of the film in most cases. I do think the acting from Joaquin Phoenix was great. It wasn't the best performance I've seen out of Lady Gaga, but I think that's just what she was given, the character she was given. So I can't say that she was, a bad actress, but
yeah, she's not in the film as much as I thought she was going to be.
No. Where the movie went wrong for me was the fact that, and you used the word regress, I felt like it hit the reset button on his character. You see him as Arthur Fleck, and you see him spiral kind of into the Joker throughout the first film, and then this movie just starts over with him again, and then he spirals back into the Joker because of Harley, but then he goes back again towards the end of the film. And the courtroom scenes, I thought, were just again, it's another film where when you see it in the trailer, I was very interested in that. I thought they were going to play it up as if like society was on his side for the most part, and that was going to lead to him becoming the Joker, the crime boss of Gotham. And that never happens, and a lot of the.
Can we spoil the end? Because I feel
I would like to.
I feel like it'd be easier to talk about because that's a large part of the problem with the movie.
That's my biggest part of
I was
my
gonna
biggest
say,
issue.
At this point, spoiler alert. Turn away now if you haven't seen the film, or you've not been looking online for the last, because I know somebody who said they had to avoid it from day one.
Yeah,
because people were already.
It is all over the internet. So,
but at this point, it's like because of its low rating, and we've given you a warning. So go ahead, spoil it.
No, I was just gonna say the biggest issue I had with the film was the predictability of the film. There was so many things in this movie that I saw coming, that I thought were going to happen, and they played out exactly the way that I thought they were going to happen. Now, the first movie threw me for a loop because things that I thought were going to happen in the first film didn't. And in fact, when we went to see the first movie, my immediate thought was, in the time that this is set, this guy is going to be a Joker, but he's not the Joker. He's the catalyst or the inspiration for the Joker that we have seen in future iterations of Batman in that world. And so I thought he was going to be the guy that Joker basically kind of models himself after. And it ends up not being the case in the first film. At the end of the first film, when all of the other people are dressed up like Joker and all this stuff, I thought for sure one of those people was going to be a younger Joker that's just completely obsessed with this guy, and that's his inspiration, and he's going to actually follow through with the things that Arthur Fleck did not follow through with. He's going to burn the city down. And we would see that in The Dark Knight and other iterations of Batman. That didn't happen. In this movie, at the end of the film, I thought for sure somebody's going to kill him, and whoever kills him is going to end up being the Joker. And, of course, there's a hallway scene, and as soon as the guy stops him, that's what I thought. I was like, this guy's going to kill him. And when you see him sitting against the wall in the background, I was thinking to myself, what would be crazy is if he slits his mouth open, and that's supposed to be Heath Ledger's Joker.
I actually thought you were going to... There's a scene earlier when they're in the cafeteria and he's leaning against the wall, and he reminds me very much of... I forget the kid actor's name. He was... he does the Star Wars video games, and he was also in the show that the guy from The Bear was in together. I can't think of...
Warlock?
No.
The guy that... not the
guy main
that played...
character from The Bear was in a show prior...
Shameless?
Yes, Shameless. He was in Shameless.
Oh, okay.
Okay, he played Joker in Gotham.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
In this movie, there's a scene where the guy from the end is leaning against the wall, and he very much kind of resembles that Joker from Gotham. And when I first saw him, I was like, it's like, it'd be like, because the first movie, again, kind of played up like he might inspire the Joker, but they didn't go that route. I was like, what if they do that with him? And then it happened.
Then it happens. Yeah. Honestly, I thought Harley Quinn was going to shoot him at the top of the stairs.
Yeah.
When he meets her up there, and she's disappointed that he's no longer. And I was like, she's going to kill him.
See,
and he's going to fall down these stairs.
I told Keith, I'm like, there were times where in the film, like like the musical numbers that you very clearly know early on these aren't supposed to be taken literally.
Yeah.
But there are also times where I was sitting there thinking about 3 different times. I'm like, I don't know if this Harley Quinn is a character in his head of some rando he's made.
Sometimes people acknowledge her, and then other times they don't acknowledge her.
And even in that scene, I was like, we literally, the scene right before he meets her on the steps, and it's the iconic steps from the first movie. It's like she puts a gun up to her head, and then immediately in that scene, she's got her hair cut short and her makeup's all run, and I'm like, okay, did she just cut her hair, or is this a figment of where he was? He was just happened to be running there, thinking he'd meet her there. This is all in his head.
Yeah,
I just like. There were too many things that weren't concrete enough.
Yeah, they weren't clear. Yeah,
and it was like too abstract in that regard that I'm like, okay, I can't give you like narrative justice here because this is just a narrative injustice.
And again, not as bad as like Megalopolis or Crimes of the Future and those movies, but again,
I had more fun watching Megalopolis.
No. I'm talking about the pretentious nature of like it's not as bad as those as far as it trying to be highbrow and like shove these themes down your throat. But at the same time, it still has that problem of thinking it's smarter than it really is. Like I can see Todd Phillips and a lot of people who try to defend it saying you didn't understand it. It's like, no, I understand it. It just wasn't good.
Say that Todd Phillips that the whole movie is a joke.
Is a middle finger.
That's a middle finger. Yes.
But see, and I was going to say, and I don't think it's that. I think that either is what he's going to come out and say now, or because again, I had this conversation with you, Keith, when you came over to record. I was like, if anything, if that's the case, well, then Todd Phillips doesn't deserve another job in Hollywood because
he could have said no.
He could have said no. He could have turned this down and said, "I don't want to do a sequel." And if somebody else comes in and does a sequel, then my name's
put
not
their
attached
name on
to
it. Yeah,
but. We got 3 Hangover movies from the guy. I think we know what his sequels are capable of, which is more of the same junk, and it's not entertaining.
It's funny. He could do like the first one well, but then when he goes to apparently he's just terrible at sequels.
Or he just doesn't give a crap, and he's just thinking, I don't want to do this.
$200 million at me. Let me.
And to me, I the reason why I don't think that that's the case, it's more so I see him more of like a child who's kicking and screaming because they didn't get their way, which is he chose to do this film. The studio probably pressured him into doing it, and he ultimately accepted it, but then he was like, you know what, but I'm not going to make the film that people want me to make, which is actually a decent sequel. I'm going to make this kind of film to not only say an F you to the studio, has nothing to do with that. It's because I don't like the message that the fans walked away with the first movie.
Yeah.
And I think that it was more so as a knock against the people who watched the first movie, who obsessed over it and liked the depiction of what kind of narrative he was telling about the psychological, deep dive this madman turns into because of pressures in society that, one, he couldn't really help, but also there were times where it was like, okay, he went too far and he turned his rage
choices.
Exactly. And it was like, I think that ultimately it errs more on that side of the pendulum where he was just kind of like, no, I don't like the message that people made about the first movie.
And I'm going to kill Arthur off now. And to a degree, like I do get his point. It's like, no, you shouldn't. It's like the same people who idolize Walter White. It's like, no, he's not the hero.
Right.
But at the same time, it's like you're making a movie about a comic book supervillain. It's like, it's not that I feel like people idolize the Joker, but he is a fun character. It's like, yes, I know that he is evil and wrong. Like, I don't think he is, like, he's not who I look up to. Like, I don't think of the Joker and think, oh, he's a role model. But he's still a fun character, like, when he's going up against Batman, and that's... Like, he's a great villain, so it's like, and people want to see that. I don't think that necessarily means that we're idolizing him in that way, that you have to take a crap on the character and be like, no. See, now he's going to admit that he's just Arthur Fleck and what he did was wrong, and then he's going to die.
And I think that was the most grievous error in the entire film. The moment we get to the courtroom scene, and again, we've already given you a spoiler warning. We already told you the end. But to me, the where it really started to fall downhill, I mean, I was already halfway tuned out, but it really fell downhill the moment he's in the courtroom and it's getting to the point where he confesses that he's not this person, this ugly person that they've made him out to be or that everybody's pressured him into being. And somehow, it's like, now I'm supposed to feel sorry for him? Like he's supposed to be a victim? Like, one, BS, and two, the fact that this entire group of again, I guess we as the audience are supposed to, we're mimicking the people who are pushing him over the edge, and now we're upset because he's not that. Yeah. Like, that's what we're supposed to be, the Harley Quinns, I guess, who get up and storm
we're
out
upset because he's not the Joker. He's like, because you made a movie called Joker.
Right.
It's like, we're upset that it's not about Joker.
I never felt that Todd Phillips' first film, I never felt that was a supervillain Joker. Like, I always felt like this, he's doing a deep psychological dive into a character that exists in this world, but he's not the Joker of the Batman films.
I mean,
and I accepted that.
And I agree, and I think that is why the first one works on a certain level.
Yeah.
But there is still the mythos of being part of Gotham.
Yeah.
He meets freaking
Harvey
Bruce
Dent
Wayne.
And
Harvey Dent.
Names,
it's like, why throw in any of that?
Yeah.
I mean, even...
Just make a movie that's not... Like, make a movie called Arthur Fleck. Because, I mean, it would have been a good movie still.
But he couldn't because he had to depend on the name. And I think that's where most fans are walking. I mean, look, and here's... I'll say something about The Divide, because we gave it 2 out of 4 stars, and even 1.5 is still more than what I think a lot of people are walking out of the theater, praising it for, or actually not praising it, but ridiculing it for. But, like, there's a reason why Madam Web got a C and this got a D cinema score. There was no expectation for Madam Web.
People already expected that to be pretty bad.
Exactly. And so if you went in even mildly entertained, which I would expect some audiences to do, it was an awful film.
At least there was some eye candy in Madam Web.
Not much. I mean, what? Sydney Sweeney's
I
in
understand exactly what you're saying, though.
Right. I mean,
that's like the Last Jedi was for me. It was like, I was expecting a decent Star Wars film. You gave me that.
Right.
Like, that's a bomb.
Everything antithetical to Star Wars.
Yes.
And the same with this is, it's like, because of how high a bar the first one had set, this one, now there are some people, and granted, look, we follow this stuff because we're in, we follow the industry. I was a little shocked when people were just like, they were shocked that it was a musical. And that's probably, I mean, granted, look, I think as it got closer to release and more people did find that out, if you don't pay attention to trailers or don't watch it, I could see that turning off viewers.
Oh, yeah.
And, of course, bad word of mouth. People saying, it's not worth it, especially even if it's a musical. But I could have easily seen people being like, why the hell would you jump to doing a musical?
Yeah.
Now, that was one of the ideas that I think for us here on the show, we were intrigued by.
Yeah.
Because of how well the first one was done, we were willing to give Todd Phillips that leeway and say, let's see what he can do. Like, maybe this could be an interesting take. And even the premise, I would grant him the premise and the way it is told in the film, I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. It's how it's executed so poorly that makes the movie boring and, again, terrible.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think that's why you're seeing such a lambasting and such a outrage from fans walking away. Absolutely trashing this film and giving it the worst rating because of just how far a separation this sequel is from the first movie. And so you just have people who are just like, no, the bar was set way high. You brought it way low and like ruined this. Like, screw you. I mean, I don't think it's. Look, it's entertainment. It's the entertainment industry. Now, there's lots of things we get outraged about on the show. I get more outraged about morals and values that people inject into our culture through entertainment, supposed entertainment, than I do about entertainment that just sucks. If it's a bad movie or a bad game or whatever it is, or even a bad book, I'll just say, okay, that just sucked, and I'll move on.
Yeah, and other people can have the opposite opinion because it's. I mean, it is subjective. I've seen people literally tweet out, "I effing hate Todd Phillips," and then I've seen other people
way
say,
too far.
"The second time you see this, you're gonna understand it." If you don't I've seen people, and I'm like, "You went and saw this a second time? I didn't even." Go to the theater.
If they went and saw it a second time, then they still didn't crack 50 million. That's pretty bad.
I've always hated the argument of, you don't understand it. It's like, no, I'm not stupid.
That's not my
like,
job.
Honestly, I want to tell those people, it's like, no, honestly, I think you're so stupid that you think it's brilliant.
You're trying to find something good to say about
it's like, maybe you're just so slow that you think this is brilliant. I don't know.
I would have liked the movie better if it would have been an actual full-on musical. Obviously, the story has to be different too.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, I went into it thinking that it was going to be a legit musical. This movie, I mean, if you want to call it that, had 4 or 5 short musical numbers. They're more like just a vignette. I mean, it's not a full musical.
I forget what is it called, Keith? The kind of musical that it is, because it's not.
Oh, jukebox music, because it uses it's a jukebox.
It's
musical.
used real music.
And I was going to say,
songs weren't written for the movie.
The fact that it is a jukebox musical immediately tells me that you've got to be even more outlandish or creative with how you integrate those songs, because they're not original.
The only one that I thought was well done was the very first one, where he's watching everything on television in the asylum, and he's smoking his cigarette and dancing around with all the other nutcases. That was the only one that I thought, wow, that was, if the rest of the movie's like this, this could be good, because I really liked that.
Well, from the very beginning, like the animated segment at the beginning, I thought was neat. Like, it was a fun, like, little nod to the animated shorts at the that Warner Brothers used to show before movies. And then from there on until, like you said, like him smoking the cigarette and watching the TV and going into that musical number, I was like, so far this is like a unique way to do a musical. And then, like you said, after that, it was all just flat.
And I don't want to get flagged, so I'm not going to say verbatim what it is, but I saw a tweet that was it was pretty funny. It was like, and again, a little bit more of a spoiler, it said he gets taken to the bathroom by 3 police officers.
I saw that.
And gets you know what. And then immediately the scene after that is pretty much him confessing. It's like, what does that tell you?
They said, like, the one I saw was like 3 guards take him to a back room and basically they
don't say it. We get it. We get it.
They grape the Joker out of him, is what they said. Yeah. Like, it's like he's no longer Joker after that.
Right.
So it's
like, what does that tell you? Yeah. So it's like, what kind of message is Todd Phillips sending us here? But no, overall, I don't think you're missing anything if you pass this up on this film. It's kind of insane, though, as heavily produced as this film was in terms of production budget and marketing. And it's funny because I've still seen trailers pushing for it all over the place, which makes sense. It was just opening weekend. Yeah. But it's insane to me that, just how bad a flop this is.
I'm sure, like with 200 million, but then when you consider the marketing, because it did have some pretty heavy marketing. It's
and knowing that, I think it's no secret that Warner Brothers, it's Warner Brothers Discovery, but they're like 40. I think I read it was like 40 billion in debt right now. Yeah. So they need a win, and this is not a win at all by any means. So absolutely,
the first one broke $1 billion, and it's like this one's not going to at all.
Well, they even had it projected just weeks before, which we're going to be talking about this a little bit later on, because this is our main headline and what this means overall in terms of just blockbusters and big budget flicks. But let's move into our first Halloween review. So we didn't really even say it at the beginning of the show.
Yeah.
What is our theme this year? Well, as Sean alluded to, with the zombie hand coming up out of the table, our theme
spooky
is as cliche as ever. It's something that's been around for a long time. And yes, longer than The Walking Dead.
I'm a sucker for like the classics, like zombies, werewolves, like
I am too.
Haunted houses, like
You just those are they are. They're traditional
when they're
Halloween,
well done, because there's a
right.
lot of bad ones too.
But that is our theme, zombie flicks this year. And we're starting out, no, not with Night of the Living Dead. It's classic, but we've already reviewed it. You can go on our website, redmoonproductions.com, and check that out on there.
There might be a Romero film in this month, though.
I believe there is. But no, we are talking about our first film kind of rejuvenating the zombie craze back in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And starting out with, I think, what we would consider a modern-day take on a zombie.
Yeah.
Here is our review of 28 Days Later.
Ba-da-da-da, Halloween! We are firmly into October now, and while the weather here for us at Red Moon hasn't fully settled into that fall feel, the nights still grow cold and the light fades sooner. And with macabre hits like Beetlejuice still going strong, with plenty of horror-centric films on the horizon, our annual tradition of Halloween reviews begins, and this year's theme is zombies. From the greats like George A. Romero to modern interpretations, beginning with this week's film from Danny Boyle, zombie movies have come and gone in waves, but have effectively permeated the horror zeitgeist for years. Beginning with origins in voodoo rituals, evolving, thanks greatly to Romero, into the undead monsters we are familiar with today. But even the undead zombie has seen unique variations. In come director Danny Boyle and writer Alex Garland, with a film Danny Boyle doesn't even associate as a zombie movie, 28 Days Later. Starring a then unknown cast that includes now known names such as Cillian Murphy, Naomi Harris, and Brendan Gleeson, 28 Days Later was unique in its time, as its quote-unquote zombies were completely unlike the traditional slow shambling creatures. These zombies are not the reanimated dead, but instead the result of the ominous rage virus, a disease created in a lab, spread when animal rights activists unknowingly release a test chimp from a Cambridge lab. The film picks up with Cillian Murphy's character Jim awakening from a coma to discover the outbreak of said virus. Similar in tone and nature to the beginning of Robert Kirkman's Walking Dead, which would come later. 28 Days Later is notable for its writing and characters doing their best to survive the landscape of this new world. In many ways, to me, whether thematically or in character development and story structure, 28 Days Later feels like it crawled so Walking Dead could run. Much as Romero revolutionized zombie horror films with the dead brought to life, 28 Days Later may not revolutionize, but it does something fresh and unique, while helping bring zombie films back into the zeitgeist. I could argue Walking Dead really surged zombies back into pop culture, but the spark first came from 28 Days Later. Boyle's dark and dirty set pieces, contrasted with a vast, desolate London set piece, create an ominous setting. Filmed on a Canon XL1, 28 Days Later doesn't hold up so well visually on modern TVs, but the raw, chaotic nature of the footage, alongside outdated recording equipment, adds to the experience more than detracts, in my opinion. 28 Days Later is a movie that again focuses on the darker aspects of humanity during an apocalypse. The zombies are an ever-present threat, but it's the human element that makes the film, borrowing heavily from Romero while making something that at the time was modern and new. Where the film isn't always at its best is in dated dialogue and foul language that I'm not excusing, but makes some sense from Danny Boyle, whose most prominent work at that point was Trainspotting. The rage zombies are terrifying and visceral, and their swift and violent nature made for a shocking experience in the zombie genre. Torture porn-style horror was just coming into prominence with films like Saw and Hostel, and 28 Days Later does play up the violent nature more than a Romero zombie film had before, yet it still feels relevant to the film without venturing into the over-the-top gore for gore's sake of other popular horror films at the time. In fact, worse has been seen since on TV with The Walking Dead. What Boyle and Garland created is and was Rough, an indie zombie film that feels both independent yet larger than its budget and production. And in fact, it would go on to make over $80 million on a $12 million budget, horrifying viewers with elements that, while are pretty common now, were new back then. And while I feel the script could have used some polishing, 28 Days Later still remains one of my favorites in the genre. I give 28 Days Later 3 out of 4 stars.
3 out of 4 stars.
Yeah, I've always been fond of 28 Days Later. Like I said, it's rough around the edges, but
I'm actually in agreement. It is rough around the edges, definitely dated, considering that they were pushing some new technology at the time. And look, Danny Boyle,
it's an early adopter of the digital format.
No doubt, and not in the same vein. I mean, it has the opposite problem that the early Star Wars did, where it looked too clean.
Yeah.
This looked too muddy.
Too bad.
And it definitely,
Like
I think,
it was shot with a webcam.
yes.
Well, it was,
very much so.
The Canon XL1 is,
See, and even when
Yeah.
I came to want that camera, I wanted the XL2,
Yeah.
which was the next iteration.
Yeah.
And I still didn't get that. But
Well, that was like the cutting edge of digital cameras when Danny Boyle
Yeah,
made
it was,
the movie,
yeah.
which is crazy to think like that was cutting edge, guys.
Yes.
So
but ultimately, no, I thought, one, it was the first Halloween movie I've watched this season, which
Yeah.
I'm a little bit disappointed I had to wait like 4 days in. I wanted to
Honestly,
watch something.
this movie did get me like more like in the mood to watch actual like more scary stuff. So I do appreciate that.
I mean, the only knock I could give it is, I mean, because honestly, I was thoroughly entertained from even the story elements. I mean, it's sad to say, but even the archetypes of the characters that they play, you just don't even see in movies anymore. And it's sad to think that this is only 20 years removed. But like even the female characters very staunchly like, I'm a survivalist and I will cut your throat if I need to. Rightfully so in the early beginning. But then as their relationship grows throughout the movie,
Softens up.
it not only softens up, but they have an actual bond.
And I love because I love the very first, like when you see how hardcore she is having to kill that first person she does, and there's no hesitation. It's just, oh, he's infected. You got to go now.
Yeah.
But then to see that softening up, like when they're traveling with Brendan Gleeson and his daughter and over the countryside and stuff, I love those scenes.
And it does two things. It kind of makes you unsettled because you're like, either one, something really bad is going to happen to one of these, and it's going to be a gut punch, or two, it's like she's only softening up, but then she's going to turn just because at the end of there's going to be a decision where she has to make a choice between her life and his, and she's going to choose her life, and it's going to again be a gut punch. But I don't want to spoil anything because this is actually a movie I do think people should watch. But
you just have to realize that it's going to be rough on your HD TV.
Yes.
It's going to be rough looking.
Like I said, my one gripe is not just from the early technology, but it's Danny Boyle and himself. Like if you watch any of his movies, granted, 127 Hours is a fantastic movie. Slumdog Millionaire is great. I even like Steve Jobs, if it's not specifically about Steve Jobs, but it's a fun movie and a good movie. But they're all, the way he shoots and edits things, his style is very spastic and all over the place in terms of like it's very fast cuts, and that's something to be said about keeping your attention, and it's good. But ultimately, I will say that when you're dealing with footage that I think, Sean, you said it was like 512 resolution.
Yeah, it's 512 by 492.
Oh gosh, I mean
which is lower than DVD quality.
Yeah.
Like this thing was made to be on a CRT TV.
Yeah, but the funny thing is like I went and saw this in theaters multiple times.
Yeah.
I know I saw this at least twice in theaters, and in theaters I can remember it being just kind of like. The quality was bad. It was more like found footage kind of quality, but it wasn't as bad as watching it on your 4K TV now. It just doesn't hold up.
Well, those projectors back then probably weren't. I mean, they
they
definitely
were
weren't 4K,
probably but they probably matched a lot closer to the resolution than But just the lighting and stuff in the film is so dark.
Yeah.
At times that medium just couldn't grab as enough light to really fill in some of those dark areas. So there's a lot of scenes in the movie that I felt like are so dark that you can't clearly tell what's happening. But then, I agree with the 3 stars. I'm going to be honest, the most frightening scene in this movie for me, it was when I went and saw it at the theater, and it was again last night when I watched it, is literally when he walks into the church.
Oh, yeah.
And says, hello, and these people just go...
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
and
Yes.
just stare at him with their mouths
Oh,
open.
it
They
was
don't
so
move.
good.
They just
Yep.
pop up like
Yeah.
dolls. And when I saw that for the first time, and it just, like I said, last night I watched it, it reminded me of how freaking scary that was.
Yep.
That they but then I felt like it was ruined
With the priest?
With the priest,
Yeah, it was a little
clitter
goofy.
clappering through the hallway and then coming in there.
But what I loved about that scene and what it established was even just the waking up of the people. Like,
Yeah.
for him to have been walking through the streets, which
Yeah.
again, and I remember that was one of the claim to fames back then, was this is a low budget indie flick.
How they
And
cleared
they were
the
like,
streets.
how do you clear the streets of London and
shot
shoot
it at-
these shots?
they shot it
Danny
early in the
Boyle literally
morning,
said
yeah.
they would if anybody was walking, they would ask them if they would move out, and they would dump all the litter and stuff and ugly up the street,
Yep.
shoot really fast, and then clean everything up so that people could go back to what they were doing.
a fantastic job, because it
Yeah.
really does look like
Yeah.
it's completely just empty. The
Yeah.
whole city's
well, even
empty.
even storytelling wise, to that regard, in the beginning of the movie, you're kind of thinking like, okay, well, where are all the bodies?
Yeah.
Right.
And then you see newspaper clippings of an evacuation.
Missings and yes,
yeah,
yeah.
And it's so you know that
Again, show,
somewhere.
don't tell.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
That's actually one thing I love so much about this movie. Is so much of it is show don't tell. Even kind of the reveal at the end when they're talking about the quarantine and whether that's real or not, and he's in the woods and he looks up and sees the plane and he realizes this guy was telling the truth.
Yeah.
I love that. It didn't have to be a whole exposition about, well, then the government started doing this and
Yeah.
quarantine, and it was just simply we're on an island. What do you think the government would
Yep.
do? And then you see the plane and you're like, he's telling the truth. Yeah.
Right. And also, kind of going back to a little bit of the critique, I will say it's one of those things where if he had just kind of zoomed out a little bit,
Yeah, they're close.
even in the darker stuff,
Yeah. Close-up
scenes,
shots, yeah.
it would have, you could tell in the indie film aesthetic, because there are some set pieces that are definitely you can see where they put the money in terms of the budget, like a gas station blowing up, and even at the end, I would say with some of the armory setup, definitely is where a majority of the money went. But you can tell in some of those other more intimate but close encounters with these, zombies.
Yeah.
Even though he doesn't like to call them
Yeah,
zombies.
the fans typically just call them rage zombies.
The rage
Yeah,
zombies.
because rage virus. Yeah.
But it's interesting because it's he uses a lot of the quick cuts and the sound effects, and so kind of reminds me a lot of Peter Jackson in either not just Brain Dead or The Frighteners. I think Bad Taste.
Oh yeah.
Reminds me a lot of Bad Taste in that sense. Where, and again, it's used to good effect. It's exactly what you do. I mean, in the same way that I would criticize Joker 2 Folie or Joker Folie do, you cannot see why that movie cost $200 million versus the first one cost $80. There's a huge there's no point at while I was watching Folie do that I'm like, oh, this definitely costs $150 million more for a reason.
Yeah.
In this, again, this is what brilliant directors do: is they take the budget they're given and they find a way to maximize
this had a
it.
tiny budget.
Oh, yeah.
And I think 8 to 12 million was the budget, and it made 85 million. So I mean, they did very well for itself.
Oh gosh, yeah. And I think part of it is just with it being having an English background and with it being released in UK and around the 2000s, especially even in the States, we were going through a very indie flick stage.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And so
I mean,
it was
Fox
very
Searchlight. It's
yeah.
a Fox.
Yeah.
Well, it was a Fox Searchlight. I did find out why it's not streaming anymore because we were looking that
Yeah.
up because Disney owns Fox. The producer, not Danny Boyle and Alex Garland, the producer they worked with to make the original, bought the rights back for the movie from Disney.
Okay.
So that they could make the third movie. So that's
okay.
why it's not on any streaming services, because it apparently was on Hulu at one time.
presumably when
Yeah.
28
You can watch
years,
28 weeks
Yeah,
later.
that
on
one's still on
streaming, but
Hulu
not
because
this one.
apparently he didn't buy this distribution rights back from them for that one. So that's still on Hulu. He
Well,
just bought
and-
the rights to the first one, so they
Maybe
can make
when
a third
28
one.
years later comes out, they'll have some kind of streaming bundle or something.
Who knows?
I don't know.
Yeah.
But no, I overall, I think this was a good first pick. I think I told you all while the review was going on. I mean, playing The Last of Us, you mentioned with The Walking Dead,
Yeah.
lots of things in this film with regard to how the zombies move and how they react to certain things that you can easily see spurred inspiration on that series and in that game, and lots of lasting effects from this movie, I think, for modern day zombie flicks.
Yeah, I would. It's not an argument, but I would kind of say I really feel like the rules are set at the beginning of the film. It's transmitted by blood. They stick to the zombie rule. You got to get bitten or get bled or on or whatever.
Blood in your body,
blood in your eye or whatever. So they stick to that rule. But the rule that this movie broke, and I remember going to see it, and I'm just like, Jesus, they're fast.
Yeah.
Zombies in no other film
This
other
was the
than
first time,
World War Z is the only other zombie film I've ever seen where the zombies run and can open doors and do all that kind of stuff. So seeing that in this movie, it was like, oh, you literally have to run for your life.
Oh, I loved the scene in the parking. Not the garage, whatever it is.
The tunnel?
The tunnel.
Yes.
That was creepy
the
as hell.
one time, like, the hectic cuts and stuff I thought actually added because it made the tension of them trying to, like, change the tire. And,
I was like, there's no way.
Yeah.
They're not going to do this. But anyway, Sean, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I think even in The Last of Us and in The Walking Dead, the zombies, the monsters charge at you, but the zombies are most of them are fairly, they shuffle. You have time to react and get away. Whereas I think this film is unique in the way that it presents these zombies as full of rage, and that they are running you down and climbing, and
it was almost like their senses were heightened.
Like they were on adrenaline.
Yes,
the whole time.
Well, even just the simple explanation in the beginning, and I mean, even that isn't solely unique. We've seen like virus like breakout movies before, and like the idea of lab chimps. What was that movie? Was it Congo? What was the one where there was a lab chimp?
Congo.
So it's like it's not wholly unique, but at the same time, the way it was done, it added to the movie.
And it didn't waste all the time. Literally, it's a 5-minute exposition of this is how it gets into the world.
And you also see how freaking activists ruin everything.
It's like that's what happens.
Well, here's the thing.
They
It's
wouldn't
funny
show that
because
today.
As much as we're kind of joking on that, that's what we took away from it. It's sad because I feel like any scene written that way now would be rewritten.
Yeah.
They would not let that. They wouldn't because again, it says this bad message of no, they can't be activists because that sends a message that activism is bad.
Well, even what the scientist said, like I didn't disagree. He's like, in order to to learn and understand how to feel like we have to like experiment. Like,
I kind of like that in the instance that they run into him, and he's of course trying to tattle on him and like call up help, and he's like, hey, they broke in, and of course they look at him as the bad guy, and he's sitting here and he's like, you don't know what you're doing. Like we just discovered this like a few days ago.
It's like they're all infected.
Right.
Well, he even says, he goes, I know how this looks. Like, so he's even acknowledging, we're experimenting on animals. It's not morally the best thing, but this is what we have to do to be able to combat this.
We may be screwed. Like, don't let this out.
Don't let it out.
Well, they know best.
And I love the first person. She just has to let that, and he just mauls her face off. Again, that was one scene where I was like, because of the quick cuts, again, editing trick because of the budget. For budgetary reasons, but it was one of those moments where I was like, okay, you're compensating for the fact that you can't really show like a monkey clawing her face off, which, I mean, so be it. You don't need it. It does its job effectively. But it was just one of those other moments where, again, they saved that money for bigger set pieces down, later on in the movie.
And also the actors in this, like, were all unknown at the time, and I think that's crazy that like Cillian Murphy, Naomi Harris, Brendan Gleeson, Christopher Eccleston, the main villain, is more known now, but not as much as the other three. And it's just funny seeing all these faces. They're like, man, this is weird
Naomi Harris. I immediately was like, oh, Moneypenny. That's the first thing I thought of. That was the first thing I saw her in.
And it was because Danny Boyle said when they made the movie, they wanted unknowns at the time. They didn't want any like expectations going in.
Well, she was also, or at least the African American woman. Is that who you're talking about?
Yeah.
She's in the Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah, she was.
That's right. She's she's the voodoo woman. What's her name? I forget her name. You're
Callisto.
Right.
Well,
Callisto.
She's revealed as Callisto. I forget what her name was.
Yeah, before that.
But you're right. And then
they all went on to do things.
Didn't even choose this by happenstance, but the fact that Brendan Gleeson's in both Joker,
that just
this
was a coincidence.
God rest his soul.
Much better role, I think, in this than, not that he was bad in Joker, just it was anybody could have done that role.
All right, we've talked about 28 Days Later. We are literally an hour into the show and only done reviews.
Man,
But the funny thing is, our headlines kind of go back to what our first review was, so we're going to talk about Joker some more. Let's get into it. That's right. Our big story is no laughing matter.
It don't work.
It's
I love it.
It doesn't even have the things
I
up.
love Apple. Hold on.
You're fine.
I
You're fine.
gotta launch it. Week in and week out, it picks and chooses.
It does.
It picks and chooses.
There it is.
I do. I hate that
There
thing.
it is.
But yeah, that's right. No laughing matter for Warner Brothers and the studio that now has presumably one of the biggest flops of the year, if not the biggest.
Yeah, they're on the struggle bus.
They are, and I mean, what does this say overall for the industry? I mean, because if you think about it, I mean, again, Joaquin Phoenix, Lady Gaga, a sequel
big
to
names.
$1 billion plus film. I mean, it was the biggest superhero film prior to Deadpool Wolverine that just released this past summer. I'm sorry, not biggest superhero film, biggest rated R superhero film up until Deadpool Wolverine. So I'm curious, what does this mean overall? The fact that it's flopping this bad, and you would have thought it was a sure bet.
I'm really hoping it teaches, especially Zaslav, because his whole thing when the merger between Discovery and Warner Brothers happened and he took over has been, we have a lot of IPs that aren't being utilized. We need a new Harry Potter series. We need more Lord of the Rings movies. We need DC. Let's greenlight Joker 2. I'm hoping it teaches him that just because you have IPs, those aren't a guaranteed way of making money if you're still producing a garbage movie.
Yeah.
It's like you can milk IPs dry. Disney's been doing, you would think he could look at Disney and see how poorly Marvel and Star Wars is doing and realize just because we have IPs doesn't make them surefire bets. You still have to appease the fans. Like, when you have a fan base of a property that already exists, you don't go out of your way to piss the fans off. That's just stupid.
Well, to piggyback off of that, though, this movie didn't have a very good opening weekend.
No.
Which I was really surprised for, because I was thinking, people will go, after I saw it, I'm like, a lot of people probably went to see this, and then word of mouth got out and people quit going to see it. But it didn't really have that big of an opening weekend, so people didn't go to see it to begin with, to find out that it's a terrible movie. Yeah.
Well,
so I don't understand that part, because the first one was so good.
I was just saying, I do know there's a lot of people, and I can't attest to percentage or anything like that, just based on online. There's a lot of people that already noped out the minute they found out it was a musical. And they were just like, I don't want to see a Joker musical.
Yeah. Well, and it premiered back at the Venice Film Festival. And
did it get a standing ovation?
12-minute standing ovation, which, hey, Megalopolis got 8.
Yeah, it's
so it got that many more minutes. Okay,
I mean every festival film gets a standing ovation now.
Well, if you don't have at least a 30-minute standing ovation, your film is crap.
I want to know how much baloney that is. I want to see all 12 minutes of that standing.
I
ovation.
do too.
Yeah,
I know. I think it's BS as well.
Yeah,
I'm like, there's no way. It's like from the moment the credits roll, people are just like,
yeah. And everybody just stands there, the entire credits clap. Like how pompous and pretentious do you have to be to stand and clap for 12 whole minutes?
Well, at this point,
dude, I don't stand for 12 minutes at church. I'm praising my God and my Savior, and I don't stand for 12 minutes.
Exactly.
I'm like, gosh, are we going to sit down soon?
But that's the funny thing, too, is I'm sitting here and I'm like, if there's no footage, I mean, and if anything, people now know the trend. So it's just like, I guess we just stand up and clap for that long. It's like it's just become part of the fanfare. Yeah, so how is it even notable at that point? It's not. It's
not. Yeah.
Ultimately, with this movie, I think I agree with you, Keith. It's part of what we've seen as breaking the trend with Marvel, and that it's not just a sure thing just because it's a popular IP. I think they already were screwing up in so many different ways as far as having these separate universes, knowing that Gunn is taking over. And his Superman movie's coming out next summer.
Yeah, Batman 2 is coming out next in winter of 2025.
And it doesn't make any sense to me, because these are characters that are not related at all in the same universe.
No.
And it's like, why start off a completely new trajectory of a major IP or major IPs without them being integrated or connected?
Yeah.
And think that you're going to have audiences. Now, you could have said the same thing that we all were saying with like Wonder Woman and Aquaman back before they ruined those. It was like, okay, those could be one-offs and we could still use those characters. But even this, we were understanding that back before the whole Gunn relationship happened with DC, at least this Joker Todd Phillips one was kind of seen as a one-off.
Yeah.
And like you said, for them to come in and obviously, can't let $1 billion franchise go to waste. We got to make the money off of it right now. We got to do it fast. But clearly that was not the case. And one of the biggest reveals, I think, is, again, unlike the movie, but more egregious from a business standpoint, was they didn't even test screen.
Yeah.
They actually, I don't know if it was because they didn't plan on it originally, or if after the Venice Film Festival and their 12-minute standing ovation, they thought, oh, we're brilliant. We know Todd Phillips has got another one in the bag. Like, we're good. We're not even going to test screen for this. I mean, I honestly don't know if that would have helped anyway.
Yeah.
No,
I
think people would have heard sooner that it wasn't good.
Yeah.
It seems like, and that's weird. The weird thing is even after the big reveal at the film festival, they still came out tepid. It was like at a 64%.
Yeah.
That's not stellar.
Yeah,
No.
If early reviews for your movie and a sequel are 64, people were already a little lukewarm to what this was.
Critics kind of had, again, critics are slow to learn, so they were kind of like, we think audiences won't like this. We're not really sure,
No, you're right. The consensus was we're trying to read the room, and is this going to be because that's the thing. The critics themselves don't want to get ahead of the gun and actually have a real opinion.
Yeah.
They want to try to read the temperature and say, can I say this is genius? And then I'll be on the cutting edge, and then when it comes out and fans love it, it's like, see, look at me. You can trust my opinion. I was on the right side of history. And it's like they're not really exclaiming to you what their real opinion is. But I really do think it's a situation of this was from the top down. Todd Phillips was given a blank check. They thought, hey, you knew what the secret sauce was for the first movie. We're going to trust you. To some of that, I don't really blame the studio. I mean, I can understand them being a little bit more lax because, hey, part of their idea is we want to get. I mean, how many times have we come on here on this show and said we want the creators to fulfill their vision?
Yeah.
But we've also said of recent too with the likes of Scorsese and Ridley Scott. Francis Ford Coppola.
Yeah.
It's like we've had flop after flop after flop, and all of those movies, their last movies, were terrible.
And I do want creator-driven content. I don't like, because that's part of the problem with Marvel now is they've become so cookie-cutter and dull. But at the same time, you need a creator that be creator-driven, but at the same time, it has to fit within the world that's established. It's like, that's the difference between Thor Ragnarok and Thor Love and Thunder. Thor Ragnarok is very much Taika Waititi, but it still fits within the MCU as we knew it during the Infinity Saga. Then you get Thor Love and Thunder, and it's just all over the place where they just gave Taika free reign to do whatever, and rather than make a Thor movie, he's like, well, I just want to hang out with all my friends and make a comedy. And that's what we got, was just crap. So... And again, as David Zavslaw's like, let's push IP, but we'll still, like you said, give Todd Phillips, free reign because he delivered and made us $1 billion movie. So why shouldn't we trust him? And it is really one of those things where I feel like if Todd Phillips, if this was a big middle finger and he didn't want to do it, then you shouldn't have done it. Just said no.
I was going to say, I think it's very indicative of the cultural moment that we're in. YOLO's been around for years, but I would say just a very selfish, self-centered mindset. Yeah. And I think you have these directors, especially the younger ones, and I say younger, meaning like even like my age, 34, or 40, early 40s. You have younger directors who, they have this hunger and this desire to prove themselves and get on the map, and they do so in such a way that is very, I think of like a Damien Chazelle who had a fantastic hit on the scene with Whiplash and even followed up with like La La Land.
Yeah, two great movies.
And even First Man was good, a little boring, but it was a good movie. And then you get Babylon.
Yeah, Baby Lion.
And I think of Baby Lion. And then I think of something like what we've just seen from these so-called greats, the ones who have an established, career and
Coppola.
Name
and portfolio. I mean, it's like, well, we kind of made fun of Coppola's last week because it's like really since, what was it? Dracula was his last decent one in the early 90s.
I think 93.
So yeah,
is that when that came out?
It's been
maybe a little bit
decades.
after that.
Bram Stoker, yeah.
But and even then, I would only argue. Well, I can't. I mean, the Godfather trilogy is it's up there.
Those are great.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna knock those, but I mean,
but Ridley Scott's in the same boat.
Yeah.
And I would even argue, who did I just mention?
Scorsese. Yeah.
I mean, it's like,
well, even Spielberg. Like, I mean, The Fabelmans was not.
No.
I was like, for that to be a movie about your life, and it seems less passionate than Saving Private Ryan and Schindler's List.
I think shaving.
Shaving Ryan's Privates.
Yeah. Saving Private Ryan is. I think that's Spielberg's last great film.
Yeah.
Not the last ever. I'm thinking out of what we have right now, I think Private Ryan is the last great movie he made.
Yeah, I mean,
Lincoln was not as good as Saving Private
no,
Ryan.
I was just
I
saying
don't mind Lincoln, but it's no Saving Private Ryan.
No, I would agree. I mean, Lincoln was his last one that I would rewatch, but it's not. I don't put it up there in his upper echelon, and definitely not.
What was it? War Horse? Ready Player One wasn't as great as it. Yeah, Bridge of Spies was lukewarm too.
Yeah,
I liked Ready Player One for what it was, but it's not one that I have this need to revisit. Yeah,
but I think we're in this era of, especially with social media, and I get it, but it's funny because you'll hear these very people, especially in Hollywood, be the first ones to say you can't listen to the critics all the time, you can't listen to the naysayers, don't read the comments section, but yet these are the very ones who react to this kind of outrage, and they do so by actually instituting the very negative behavior that they say you shouldn't elicit or shouldn't respond to. And yet they're the ones creating movies or acting in such a way that are like a little child who's like, oh, okay, so if you want more of this, well, fine, I'll give it to you. I'm going to give it to you more so than you even thought you could ever want.
Wow.
And it is. It's like a little stubborn kid kicking and screaming, not getting their way. So then they just give in. And yeah, I mean, you've seen it. Little kid throws a fit, and it's like, I told you to pick up your toys. Next thing you knew, they go over and start picking up the toys, and they start throwing them.
Yeah.
And they start pitching them and start breaking it, and then you got to swat their tail. Because it's like, hey, bad boy. That's what I want to do to Todd Phillips. Bad Phillips.
Yeah.
One of the quotes from the article is, I guess somebody tweeted this out, but it said, "At Todd Phillips, films amaze me and I enjoy them thoroughly." Actually, this is it's a quote from Coppola.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It says, ever since I saw The Hangover, he's always one step ahead of the audience, never doing what they expect.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm like, but he set the expectations with the first movie.
Right.
And then he's going to give you not what you expect in the second movie.
I think what is so rich about that comment coming from Coppola is
they're smarter than we are. They
Right.
know.
But it's step ahead of the audience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like we're so above the rest of us.
And that's what I hate about a lot of these. Coppola, Cronenberg, even Scorsese now a bit, is this idea that their ideas are so brilliant that, Scorsese had to make this 3-hour drawn-out epic or even freaking Horizon from Kevin Costner.
Yeah.
It's this idea that our ideas are so brilliant that we have to make them exactly as we envision them, and if the audience doesn't like it, well, that's just because they're not as sophisticated as we are.
Right. And I don't think that bodes well for the industry, because really what I see, I mean, and it's sad because we do follow the industry week to week, and we probably are inundated with it a lot more than your average viewer. But
true, I think things irk us more because we see it weekly.
True, but I also do think, I mean, it is part of the culture we're in with the streaming wars and how much content there is out there to be consumed. Mm-hmm. It's like, one, how can you not be? I don't know about you all. I'm a lot more pickier. I have so much more ways I can spend my time.
Well, you got 600 series produced last year,
right,
so it's like with 600 shows to watch, you got to be picky about what you want to see.
But that's the thing. I don't blame those who give things a try and then maybe say, that's not for me. That's one thing. That's just trying something else, trying something out. But for there to be as much out there as there is, and for me to have the limited amount of time that I do to actually enjoy and be entertained, I just felt like there was a time where, I mean, again, the reason 28 Days Later still stands up and holds up well, like a lot of other classic old movies, is because there was some passion and heart behind it that you can tell the filmmaker had when making it, versus people who are literally, it is become a day job. I mean, again, I know y'all kind of find it funny that I'll spend a lot of time on YouTube watching stuff, but again, I like things that are kind of a little bit more, I'd say, fictional than non-fictional, and maybe deal with my interests, and you can pinpoint your interests in a very specific way on YouTube. Mm-hmm. But that kind of content is more enriching, or it feels like it's more fulfilling than some of the stuff that I used to turn to and watch, because it used to be that it wasn't controversial to have a show on television that everybody would watch once a week, because it had to be somewhat universal. Because you had only that one chance to reach a wide swath of people. It wasn't as targeted or wasn't as narrow-minded or visioned. because you actually had to hold an audience to make sure that your show got renewed, that you, one, had food to put on your table and got a second season, but also that, you actually felt like you were adding something to the culture in the social fabric.
Make sure people come back next week.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, there's also more competition because it's like, okay, if you want your show to be renewed and have, like a 7-season series, you got to be good, because if you crap out and get canceled, the next person's waiting in line to pitch their show. So now it's like when you have all these streaming services that are begging for content to get subscribers, it's like, oh, you don't have to compete with Johnny's production team because
we're gonna sign both of you.
Yeah, we'll sign both of them. Yeah, it's like we need the content, so everybody gets to make their show.
Oh yeah, you go. Great, I'm glad. I'm happy for you. You got a job with Peacock. I'm going over here to Max. Or I'm going over here to Apple.
It's like everybody needs content, so we're going to buy whatever garbage people got to sell.
Yeah, and to me, again, you're getting so much more junk food TV and movies, and it's funny because that's why I think it is so embarrassing to have a movie like Megalopolis come out like it did last week, and we laugh at it because it's like, dude, you did the Godfather trilogy.
It's like
you went from the Godfather trilogy to the Megalopolis, and you thought this is a masterpiece?
Hey, Jack was in between there.
True. The true masterpiece.
That's on Disney Plus. I didn't even realize it. I accidentally hit the Disney Plus button on my Roku.
Accidentally. It's a sin. I shouldn't have hit the Disney
No, I mean,
Plus.
because I didn't watch anything on there. Like, I was picking up the thing and pressed the...
And you were
with
like,
my
oh,
hand.
crap, but nobody watches
and
that.
it popped up, and I was like, well, I'll see what... No, I mean, because I still had to go into my profile. So I was like, I'll see what's on Disney Plus. So I clicked in my profile, scrolled through, saw Jack, laughed, and I just backed out. I was like, there's nothing on it. I was like, I don't want to watch anything on here.
It is. It's just a sad state we're in. And I think it's the reason why, again, you have that butting of heads between the consumers who actually want legitimate, actual content versus the studios who are just like, no, you're going to like what we give you and you're going to enjoy it. And it's you have a conflict of interest. It's not actually working out for either party. And even though there's more content than ever has existed in the world of man now than there ever has been, you still find ways to just say, well, this isn't for me, or this isn't entertaining. This isn't worthwhile to waste my time on. And if you're
Rings of Pooh.
Yeah. Oh gosh, Rings of Pooh. Don't even get me started on that. I stopped after the second episode of the second season.
Do you still watch clips?
No, I have taken to watching, thank God, like Nerderotic and Geeks and Gamers.
You didn't see Tom Bombadil and Gandalf together? You know what I'm talking about?
Yes. Are you serious?
Oh, there's people who loved it too. I saw comments online. It's like,
horrible.
I got a tear in my eye when they started singing together, and I was like,
they sang?
Yeah. And I was like, which is
I've got to watch
within
it.
the Tolkien universe, that's fine.
Yeah.
But it's how you like. I like the dwarves singing in The Hobbit. Because
No, but
it's
I
very
immediately
rustic
think
and
of
it fits.
either Agatha All Along what was the latest?
Check that out.
No, they tried to make it in the vein of Tolkien. I'll give them that.
But what was the last one?
That was a musical that sings?
No, it was the last flop that Disney made, the Star Wars one, Acolyte.
And
it's like,
then they start singing.
from men, or wait, what is it? Something.
Yes, it's something like that. The power of one,
the power of two,
the power of many. Yeah. I would say it's equally laughable. In my opinion, people liked it. I was just I can't believe you people liked
They
that.
pull from like lines from Harry Potter where it's like the staff. The wizard doesn't pick the staff picks the wizard.
See,
and they literally call Sauron, like they literally say, you are the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
It's so bad.
Oh, I did hear that part because I think that was in the second, or he mentioned something. He's like, there will only be like one Lord of the Rings or something.
Yeah,
it's
and then
horrible.
there's the way they say, they allude to Gandalf. Grand Elf.
Grand
Elf. Where the name comes from.
Yes.
Well, that is actually part of Tolkien lore, but it was terribly done in the show.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, and then, but you see these terrible. I mean,
it was so on the nose.
No, I think the other thing
Grand Elf.
I get so pissed about is you have the mainstream media like IGN and GameSpot and all Variety, Hollywood. They're all in bed with one another. One, they're all owned by like one parent company, so they're just derivatives of the same parent company that hire like-minded individuals, so they all regurgitate the same junk headlines. And when you see headlines come across like, we finally learned the origins of Gandalf's name, like some big reveal, and I'm like, they pump up this schlock, I'm not going to say this word, they pump it up as if it's some new wave, like hot again. Like there is something that's actually worth consuming.
He's
there.
revealed to be Gandalf. All the headlines were like, they finally revealed the identity of the stranger. Like we haven't known who he's been.
We didn't know what's his name was Sauron. Like I don't want to go off on a tangent.
Yeah, no, we got.
It is indicative of exactly what we've been talking about as to why Joker 2 Folie à Deux failed, and also why we continue to see these huge failures from huge IPs. Because a lot of times what it is it has nothing to do with the original work or the original intention of the entertainment behind the work. It all has to do with, this is a money maker. They think we're stupid. They think the fans are stupid, and they will just consume anything that has Lord of the Rings in the title. And that if it's somehow associated, they'll just consume it. And it's like, look, I consume Peter Jackson's Hobbit trilogy, and and trust me, those are not perfect films by any means. But they are still far and away better than anything else we've gotten. And at least there you could argue with production, issues and whatnot that sprung from him doing those movies. But we really are. I think we're in a funk creatively, and I think it takes not only a new wave of talent to come through the industry, but also it takes balls, and I think less cowardice for people who are in the industry to also say, I'm not going to do this just because you want to make another $1 billion franchise. I'm not going to say yes to this because, it's just a paycheck, and at the end of the day, I care more about the paycheck than I do my own dignity. Because, you may make here's the thing, you may make money, or if anything, this could put Todd Phillips in a bind because nobody's going to hire him. Who knows if he's going to have another movie, or if they say, you just made a $450 million flop, dude.
Yeah.
Like, we're not backing you up on any other project you want to do. The only thing you're going to be able to do is something that's a guaranteed money maker. So, overall,
The Hangover 4.
Yeah. It's coming. You wait, man.
Are we touching any of the other headlines?
I mean, we can a little bit.
Just to go along with what you were just saying, I think both of the other headlines speak to that.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I mean, just the fact that it's rumored, and I think it's more than just a rumor at this point, that Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman are going to host the next Oscars.
They're at the top of the list, but nothing's been confirmed.
Well,
yet.
I bet they will. It's the biggest movie of the year. I guarantee you it will be.
Would they accept?
I don't know. Hugh Jackman's done it before.
Yeah, he's done it before.
True.
And it was brilliant because he did like a Broadway show. Like I thought it was great.
Yeah.
Entertaining.
So I can see them being entertaining because they have that chemistry, and I think they would bring that on stage as well. But I think that just goes to show you that the Oscars are dying. And so they're going to what can we do? Yeah, we'll take the big Deadpool and Wolverine's the biggest movie of the year. I think it's going to stay that way.
How can we pull in viewers?
Yeah,
we'll get Ryan Reynolds.
We'll get to the biggest people, and then Daniel Day-Lewis coming out of retirement. To me, that's
doing
that's
that for
another
his son.
Oh well, baloney.
This is his son's first directorial debut, and he's going to be in that movie for him.
Baloney.
I mean, I will say the premise of the film,
he needs money.
Whether artsy fartsy,
I don't think he needs money. I just think he needs.
He's looking upon the films that are out right now and being like, yeah, I need to get back out there. I need to bring it back.
I don't think it's that. I think he wants to help his son. Well, and I think it's a little bit more nepotism of like, hey, my son's directing a movie, I'll be in it.
I don't think it's like
my name will draw somebody.
Yes,
exactly.
I don't think it's like an innocent like, I just want to do this to help my son. I think it's if I'm in my son's movie, people will go see it.
Right.
Yeah.
And then look, hey, I'm not going to complain. It's a
He's
dad
a great
helping out
actor.
his son.
He really is.
Yeah, it's his dad helping out his son.
I just laughed too that it's like.
But the actual premise of the film is about a relationship between like sons and fathers and like different generations of men. And so I'm kind of intrigued to see what it could be, but who knows how that's going to be taken in Hollywood.
I mean, we
with someone like Daniel Day-Lewis, who great actor, but loopy as hell.
Oh yeah,
he's out there.
Yeah,
so
full method.
Oh yeah. So I'm like, who knows how his son turned out?
That's going to be interesting.
It might be his last directing movie.
Well, and
his son has to. He's
like, hey, Dad, it's like you. It's like I'm not your father. Like, just go full method on him. He's like, I don't know you.
Yes. It's like and cut. And it's like, this is what it was like growing up with Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yeah.
Like, some days I was his son, other days I wasn't. Some days I was a little Indian boy. Right. Other days he was slapping me because he was Lincoln.
It's
like, I don't know.
During There Will Be Blood, he was probably throwing food at him at the dinner table.
I drink your milkshake.
Throwing chicken at him.
But no, okay, all right. Those were good wrap up on those.
Okay.
It's like everything in Hollywood is just recycling.
Oh, it's working. Nice.
Nice.
Oh,
There
that
it
was
is.
real
the
Gandalf.
other thing
That's
too.
the
and
real movie.
the Balrog is in.
Yeah, they do
yeah.
reveal that, which
They
I hate.
reveal
too.
it.
Wait, you mean did they do another tease just like they did?
No,
at
no,
the-
he
full on.
he
They
shows
awaken
up,
him, and it's
but
like,
then he goes back to sleep.
well, yeah, because
So just like they did at the end of the first season.
well, no, he attacks and kills some people or a person and goes back to sleep because in the Tolkien timeline he shouldn't be awake yet.
Yeah, it's like 1,000 years or something. Isn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah,
yeah.
It's terrible.
Well, it's like if they already know he's there, like why would in the Lord of the Rings movies, why would they still go into more? Like it doesn't make sense if you already know he's there.
Dwarves dwell too deep.
Yes, it's like the point of that is they didn't know he was there. They
Yes.
drug deep, woke
Dug
him up,
deeper
and all
woke
died.
him up, and then that's the
Yeah.
end. That's curtains.
And it's
Yeah.
like, oh, they
But
dug
no.
deep, woke him up, but then he went back to sleep. So they're like, oh, we can keep digging.
We'll dig deeper.
Yeah, that's stupid.
Yeah.
Well, what they didn't really tell you is in Two Towers when Gandalf defeats him, he
Yeah.
didn't defeat him by killing him at the sword. He sang to him.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that was how he really
Him and
defeated.
Tom.
Yeah, that's right.
He called up Tom and was like, we got to sing this Balrog back to
Yes.
sleep.
All right, let's head into our story time.
It's story time, where the podcast members tell their stories.
Story time.
Stories.
Lullaby Balrog.
All right,
Lullaby.
Balrog. I like it. Lullaby Balrog.
Yes. Sing him to sleep.
Balrog.
I like it though. What's your what is it again?
Our-
Your segment?
Our segment this evening, to coincide with the Halloween season we're in, is
Yeah.
your favorite trick or treating story.
This says memory.
That too.
I mean, same difference,
I
right?
threw in
I know.
story because of story time. But
It's
yeah,
not-
memory.
It's not called memory time, Keith. It's called story time.
All
Come on.
story times are memory times.
Are they? Maybe some stories
good,
you don't want to
some bad.
remember.
In the multiverse.
He's turned into old
The
Hollywood.
multiverse is over.
So what's your all's favorite story time?
Favorite trick or treating memory?
Yeah.
It's funny because I mean I feel like it's just a merge of like because every year was a variation of kind of the same thing growing up, going through the neighborhood, and it was always great. I do remember I have like maybe 2 or 3 distinct memories. One of which was after you had moved away when you did come.
I was gonna say, that's
and we
one of
trick or
mine.
treated
Yep.
together. And I think were you a ninja that year? I want to
think-
say
I
you
think-
had a
well,
ninja outfit, or maybe it was
hot
red
ninja?
No. Ooh.
A Ninja Creamy. Oh, man, I just got one. I'm so excited.
But I do remember your parents like coming over. And
I was a ninja, but only because I was wanting to be a. I had like a spandex suit, but I wanted to be a Mortal Kombat character.
That's
Oh.
yeah.
And they didn't have enough time to really finish it, so I just became a ninja, and
Yeah.
it worked.
It worked
Yeah,
out.
Became a ninja. Yeah,
It works.
but
Yeah,
it is
yeah.
funny. You're right. I do remember that.
You know what's weird is that I remember what you were, but I cannot for the life remember
I
what
can't
I
remember
was.
what you were.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Might have been a pirate. I don't know. Is that sound right?
A pirate? I don't remember being a pirate.
I
I
know-
remember specifically one year because like I had a lot of maid costumes too, but I also like every now and then would get like bought costumes. And I remember I don't think it was the same year, but I do remember one year the like the swamp monster from Goosebumps. I had that costume,
Ooh, that would have been good.
and that was really cool. Like because like I loved that costume.
But I actually, that was going to be one of my favorite trick or treatings because like I just moved, and of course I did my neighborhood, and it was a new neighborhood, but there was plenty of houses. But then it was like I was really psyched about going over on Brackenberry, and of course back then you're talking about a time where it literally makes me think of in movies like even Beetlejuice it just came out, but I'm trying to think Hocus Pocus where you just see the streets filled with kids
Yeah.
all over
And they were out
trick-or-treating.
like late because it's
Yeah.
like you could trick or treat one neighborhood and then go to another neighborhood
Yes.
and keep trick or treating because
Yeah.
people didn't stop at like like when it got dark like they do now. It's like you kept going until like
I would
people
say-
started turning their lights out and no longer giving
And-
candy.
Funny enough, now it's like I'm more or less stick to it's like we'll typically go to E-Town or my brother's neighborhood.
We still
and-
go to Brackenberry, like my parents.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
But
I
it's
mean,
like-
it's actually a decent. It's not. It's like when we grew up, but
Yeah.
it's actually still pretty decent.
And that's the thing. I actually like the fact that they're part of a neighborhood where they actually do have lots of kids that do trick or treat.
Oh, yeah. That's
and
always
it's weird
great.
because it has shifted to, and I think it's more so because of the parents. it's earlier now.
Yeah.
It's like definitely before it gets dark.
Oh, yeah.
And
It's like it starts at
probably
like 5
done.
o'clock and it's
Yeah.
done by
Yes.
like 8.
That pisses me off.
It's from
See,
like 5
and-
to 8.
And
Yeah.
I'm in the same boat. I
mean,
preferred
you-
when it was dark.
You got to give it. I mean, it's just them. They're being safe. It
Yeah.
it ain't safe to
No, you're
walk
right.
around as a kid anymore.
Yeah.
It's not.
Back when like we could trick or treat till like 10 and 11 o'clock at night and
yeah.
nobody thought nothing of it.
Nope.
But
Well, and most of them in that neighborhood they're going with their parents.
Yeah.
And their parents
Yeah.
are with them, but they don't want to stay out late. So it's like 7 o'clock. They're done. They're
Now,
wrapped
in
up.
our neighborhood, the parents drive
That's
and
late.
sit out there in the
there's
street.
there's a
And
few that do
I
it.
hate that.
I hate that too. There's
Yeah.
some that do it in my neighborhood or in my
Here's
parents'
the
neighborhood
thing.
too.
There's some. I don't like it either, but there are some that I think have reasons for it, and it's like usually it's like a truck, and they have the tailgate down, and like they're either riding along and like have a slew of people, like if they've had visitors or something. So it's kind of like a way for everybody.
Yeah.
But to me, I'm like,
In
yeah,
my neighborhood, it's bougie people.
Really?
They don't want to get out of the car. They don't want to walk. They got people on golf carts.
See, I'm
that
like, gotta
drive
get the
around and pick them up.
exercise
I'm
in,
like,
you
come
know?
on.
Unless like there was one year I remember it was raining but not heavily, so like me and Miranda and the adults like rode in the car and then just followed the kids like y'all walk in the rain.
There it's just taking advantage of being an adult. you know, that's
And then the only like the other memory I distinctly have is actually trunk or treating at Valley Station, and it was because usually that would be like in the parking lot,
Yep.
but I don't know if it was just storming that year or what have you. But there was one year where they did it in Fellowship Hall, and they made up all the rooms, and we went
Yep.
room to room.
That's awesome.
And I distinctly remember that year. Like I just remember all the rooms being decorated, and like it wasn't like there was actually some like spookiness to
Yep.
some of like they didn't like try to like. They weren't over the top, obviously. It's still a church, but they also didn't try to.
the devil's in here.
No, they
But
had scary stuff.
But yeah, they had like they
I don't-
actually, you know, was
I don't know if
it
you
was
remember
fun.
it or not, but in one of the rooms up there, and I can't remember exactly who it was, which Sunday school teacher it was, but they put like a bowl of spaghetti.
Yes, they
and
did.
you
the
had to
hor-
stick your hand
yes.
in this, and it was supposed to be guts.
They
or
did
something.
that.
It was like
That's
a
cool.
bowl
They
of
did.
wet
They did the
spaghetti.
spaghetti and the peeled grapes. I do
Yes,
remember that
yeah, that
because
was
like
cool.
one
Yeah.
some rooms had like the candy and stuff you can get, but you went in
Others
one room
was
and it
like
was
a little haunted house
Yeah, they were
kinda
like
thing.
mini haunted
Yeah.
house, and
That's
I
awesome.
loved that when they did that.
See, well, here, Sean, you go ahead and tell one of your favorite.
I was just gonna say,
trick-or-treating
the trick or treating. I don't have a lot of them, but I remember the first time that I went without my parents. So me and like my neighbor friend Craig, like we went around trick or treating. It was the first time our parents let us go by ourselves, and so we went around the neighborhood that my dad lives in, which again is close to where Keith lived back then. It was perfectly safe to run around at night, all hours of the. We would ride our bikes and trick or treat. And I went as a surf guy that got bit by a shark, so I had like a shirt that was all shredded up with blood all over it, and a fake surfboard that I made out of cardboard, and that's what I went as. But we carried pillowcases and filled them up with candy, and went over to. Like we went from Lemont to back where Keith's parents lived to. Like over where my aunt lives on off Deering Road, and I mean we went around like 2 or 3 different subdivisions, and you know, my parents weren't with me. We made it back. It was just you can't do that anymore.
No.
And I think that's why that holds a memory for me was not just the fun that we had. Finally getting to go without our parents standing out on the sidewalk walking us everywhere. We goofed around. We hid in bushes and scared smaller kids.
Oh, yeah.
Jumped out in front of girls that we knew and tried to flirt and scare with them.
Of course.
Or scare them and flirt with them. But yeah, that's I don't know. It's not going to be like that for my kids for a long time, I think. But
No, I think you're right.
but,
Well, and as we were kind of talking about, it's just that the culture's changed
Yeah.
and shifted about
Yeah.
it. It's kind of sad in one degree because I was going to say one thing definitely that I know my parents even took part in, whether it was up at our church or even around, like just to make it interesting about like at our own house. I mean, even my aunt, I remember my aunt and Uncle David, Aunt Linda and Uncle David, had a huge Halloween party that I know you and Miranda came to.
I do remember going
and
to that.
It's just like, for some reason, I just remember those events when we were younger because they actually took pride in throwing something for your guests or, you know, people you were coming over. But it was like they went above and beyond to really decorate, to go all out, whether it was Halloween, whether it was New Year's, whether it was Christmas. I mean, like Christmas is still, I think, the one big holiday that my parents will still they'll do some cool decorating that's different every year. It's the one that I in particular I know decorate for. I know Keith, you decorate for Halloween.
I do more so for Christmas.
I mean, it's like, I mean, Halloween is one that I think we were talking about it a couple weeks ago. I was like, I'm a little shocked because I feel like Halloween decorations now are a little bit more elaborate and come out sooner than I feel like Christmas decorations. Yeah. But oddly, it is odd that I just feel like the things, it didn't seem as commercialized as much as it did seem, whether you could sit there and argue, oh, it's for the candy companies to sell more candy.
Yeah.
Okay, but it also was a way for you to get together with loved ones, with friends and family, to just enjoy at least one day on the calendar. Yeah. And it wasn't like every time you turned around there was another big holiday. And it was like they actually felt unique and felt very, genuine when people actually celebrated when we were younger. And I don't know, maybe it's just as I'm getting older and becoming like, more of a prude, but it just doesn't seem like that anymore.
Yeah, it is not the same. It reminds me of like the scene in Hocus Pocus where like, the kid's like, oh, it's just, and then all the kids in the class kind of boo him, and they're like, oh, like where's your like your Halloween spirit? And it's like, yeah, people don't, I think, have that same sense of fun anymore. They don't want to be bothered.
Everybody's jaded. I mean,
and it's hard not. I can get it. It's hard not to be jaded sometimes.
But I admit too, it's like a lot of times when we do come on here and talk about the topics of the show, and I know there are times where, because it's part of our job and being in a podcast format and doing a little bit of a deeper dive on certain headlines and talking and elaborating on what the industry has become, but there are times where I'm sitting there and it's like I can't even enjoy a piece of just mindless content without micro-analyzing it because of either what we do here on the show or because that's just the way our culture is kind of designed now, is everything is such a on such a micro level, or over analyzing you. I mean, whether it's social media where it's got to be these short bursts of like a dopamine rush, and if it doesn't mean or say anything to you, then you just drop it and move on. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of our entertainment has become that, and sadly it's like when we think about holidays even, it's like the simplest little thing of going to a room that an adult had to take time, and as a kid you don't think about it, but they took time out of their life to decorate it and get creative about how they were going to decorate those rooms at your church to make that bowl of spaghetti and make it real, like something that you would remember years later. Yeah. And it worked. It actually paid off. But there's just so many people that I don't think go to that extra mile, and it just makes you, I think, again, I don't know if it's just I'm getting older or maybe just the world is more jaded now, but I appreciate those moments the more they come along and the more they pass. Yeah, I enjoy it. I try to take time to enjoy it. Like same with the holidays. Like when Christmas comes around, I do want to take time to, like, it was the first time that I think I've been in this house last year where I specifically, like, there was one night I didn't watch a movie or nothing. I turned on all the lights, had the Christmas tree on, and I listened to Christmas music. And I was like, I'm not going to do nothing for like a good solid 30 minutes, but just listen to Christmas music and enjoy the season. Because there's so much like hustle and bustle when you get older, and you just don't have the time to just sit down and soak it in.
Take it in, yeah. It's kind of funny, though, that we mentioned churches and stuff doing trunk or treats and having stuff like that, because I almost feel like even with something like Halloween that you wouldn't expect the church or churches to partake in,
right?
It's like they're actually the ones kind of preserving it and keeping it a safe event for families to go to, because that's the whole point, is you go to a parking lot, you get to experience the candy, you get to experience the costumes, you get to experience people decorating their trunks and fellowshipping with one another. Yeah, but it's also a very safe way to do those things instead of going to a bunch of strangers' houses and getting razor blades and
You're right.
They don't do razor blades anymore.
Fentanyl,
They do
fentanyl. Fentanyl or razor blades.
Those aren't just Smarties.
Yeah,
like,
that's right.
Your pixie stick's got cocaine in it.
Yeah, it's just I think it's kind of ironic that the church is the one that's kind of preserving the culture and the holiday.
Trick or treat with trunk or
Yeah,
treats.
exactly.
And it's funny because even as much as the secular culture has taken over some other things like Christmas, or even people want to argue that Halloween was, I'm like, no, Halloween still represents All Hallows Eve, the day before All Saints Day. Yeah. And yet it blew up into this cultural event. But actually, I give honor and I give credence to the church for always taking something secular and being able to twist it into something that is still uplifting and positive for the church culture, and rightfully so. It's like
Candy corn for the Lord.
That's right.
I hate candy corn.
We've
had this discussion.
We have. I mean,
I
think
candy
we
corn
talked
with
about
peanuts, like because it's like I got the payday type thing. I do like it with peanuts.
That is
but I
true.
don't just eat plain candy corn.
the
typically.
payday thing. There's no candy corn in a payday.
If you
it
take
tastes
peanuts,
like it.
if you take like a piece of candy corn and with like two, like put it in between like two peanuts and eat it, it tastes like a payday.
I agree.
Yeah,
It's kind of got the same flavor.
it's not a perfect
No.
but I mean it
mimics the flavor.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's interesting.
But here's
Okay.
the weird thing too: is I mean, candy corn is one of those that's like I don't like it, wouldn't buy it. If it's there, I'm like, well, have a little bit.
It's not that I don't like it, but like I wouldn't ever buy it. If it's at
Right.
someone's house, I'm like I might eat a piece of candy corn, like one piece, 2 piece.
I would use it as a decoration and nothing more.
Now
would
that
not eat it.
freaking taffy, on the orange wrapper and the black wrapper. No.
Oh, that stuff! I used to hate that stuff.
I can't
I don't
stand
know.
it.
Maybe I'm getting old now. It's pretty good.
Now, here's the weird thing.
It's old people candy, man. I
Yeah,
used to
I
hate it
guess.
as a kid.
They do a
Yeah.
form of that for Christmas, and I like the Christmas kind. So I don't know if
Interesting.
it's just because it's in a red and green wrapper now.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it tastes different.
Yeah,
to me.
I don't know what you're talking about because when I got it in my bag on Halloween, I used to be like, I don't want. Like I
Yeah,
used to
no.
hate those houses.
Gross.
It's like, why are you giving off this candy?
Give me a Twix.
Yeah,
Give
the
me a
Twix.
Snickers.
Yeah.
A Reese's.
It's funny because you always had the good stuff that you would eat first, and then like towards the end, like I'd have this bag of like the red and orange.
And you're right, Sean. Though I do remember still as a kid, parents would come home and like the first thing they do is like, "You're not eating anything."
Yeah.
I gotta check
Go
it.
through the candy.
Yeah.
And they would at least check to see if anything had been tampered with.
Back then, man, we had pillowcases full.
Oh yeah.
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 Yep. I remember thinking like that was a cheap tactic and like I always wanted
They
like
were
an
weeding
actual.
out the candy that they wanted as
Well,
well. I always thought.
yeah, that's true too. But I always sounded funny because I'm like, well, I got older and I was like, crap, yeah, like a pillowcase is genius. You get more.
Yeah.
It's like you ain't got to fill up just
Well,
a little jack-o'-lantern.
Back
thing.
then, you could. Like now, like because there's less people that participate, like it's harder to fill up a pillowcase. Like I've had nieces and nephews take a pillowcase, and they still get a decent amount, but they only fill it like halfway full.
Yeah.
Back when we were growing up, you could fill fill
Yep.
one up,
Yep.
dump it out, and go back for more.
Yeah, well, people are like, two pieces for you, two pieces for you.
Yeah.
And when I was a kid, man, people give you a handful
Yeah,
of candy
exactly.
and throw it in there.
Well,
That's
that's,
actually
you know,
what we've started
Inflation.
doing. Like,
Yeah, the
Screwed that
economy.
up.
Yeah.
So you can't afford to
right.
give out a
Can't
handful
afford
of
some
candy.
Snickers.
Actually, what I like about it is my parents are just like, hey, we'll give them a generous amount, but the moment we're out of candy, shut the door,
Yep, turn the
off
light
the
off.
off.
Yep.
And that was the universal sign of
Yeah.
like no more candy.
We got
Yeah.
a lady in our a house in our neighborhood that gives out Coke and Sprite.
Really?
Cans of Coke and Sprite. Yeah. Every Halloween.
I remember one year, and it was actually on Brackenberry. A guy was giving out koozies with $1.
Nice.
I don't know why.
Jeez, nice.
And it was just
Yeah.
like I remember getting $1, and I was
Koozie?
like, I got money.
So now, and again, like it's not a bad neighborhood to trick or treat in right now. It's got some decent, but now like there's one house that always gives out in that neighborhood like the whole like the big candy bars, like king size candy bars, which are really cool. And then there's another house that does like a whole like cookout for the adults. Like you go and
What?
Yeah.
they you can get candy, but they also have like a little mini grill in their driveway,
Yeah.
and they stand there and they make hot dogs, and they have like a
Dude,
cool,
that's legit.
it's, well, they
Our
have hot
neighborhood
dogs and
has a-
chili, and you can go and you like the kids get candy, and then you can get you a hot dog, and they have their ketchup and mustard out on the table, and it's like, I mean, yeah, you have to trust that your neighbor's not going to poison you, but they've been,
yeah.
I'm just, but they've been doing it for
Yeah.
so many years now. It's like I've eaten hot dogs from there the last 2 years and haven't died.
Our
so-
neighbors, Brian and Stacy, they put on Hocus Pocus or a Halloween movie on a projector in their
and
front
show
yard.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we do have somebody in the circle that does a cookout with hot dogs and stuff.
See, that's
Yeah.
awesome. I mean, to me though, that is if you do make it more neighborhood and community based in that regard, that's what you need. I mean, that's honestly what's gonna, for lack of a better term, resurrect the holiday. But it is. That's what I think is going to bring it back to being not only community focused,
Yeah.
but is going to make more people want to be involved. And I think you are seeing that to a smaller scale. But I think we all come from families and also a generation that valued that and also look for that in our own communities. Whether it is trunk or treat at a church. I mean, I know Our Savior does that, and they have a big trunk or treat every year. It's one of their biggest turnouts, which they have a school, so a lot of the parents come. And that's like a way for them to fundraise and also get involved.
Yep.
And also just, I think if you're in a neighborhood that can support it, it's awesome. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Alrighty, guys, I think that's going to do it for this
We
episode.
didn't go over too bad.
No,
with
not
two
too bad.
reviews, Yeah.
And plus, our next review, we haven't discussed. because here's the thing. Well, I don't want to say it on the show.
Okay.
But I know our next Halloween movie, our zombie flick, is actually a comedy. We're doing Shaun of the Dead, a take of Dawn of the Dead.
It's spelled the wrong way.
I know.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not SEAN.
SHAUN, which
right.
is even weirder because I've seen
Sean.
And
SHAWN.
that's the
so
one I've seen, but I
Yeah.
think SHAUN is like the
That
British.
might be the more British.
That's
yeah.
what I think
Maybe.
of.
Maybe.
Shaun
Mine's
of
spelled the
Dead.
Irish way.
So anyway, we've done 2 British zombie films in a row also.
Huh.
It's
Oh,
28
wow.
days and now
Interesting.
Shaun of the Dead, yeah.
Huh. But that's our next Halloween review, and that'll be for next week's show. But right there at the bottom of your screen, like, share, subscribe, all of our favorite social media networks. That's Red Moon Book on Facebook, Red Moon Tweet on X, Red Moon Pics on Instagram, and, of course, search for Red Moon Productions on both YouTube and Rumble. We appreciate all of the love. And for those interested in reaching out to us the old-fashioned way, Keith's got that info for you.
RMPodcast at redmoonproductions.com.
Every
like it.
time. Just love it. It was like, could you do like a spooky one?
Smooth like that
Can I do
coffee.
it? RMPodcast at redmoonproductions.com.
Oh, gosh, I'm so terrible.
It just sounded like the same thing, but in 20 years when he's old.
That's true.
Maybe.
It was like,
I was going for a, I don't know exactly what I was. Yeah.
It was spur of the moment.
Vincent
Yeah,
Price.
yeah.
I need to
Yeah.
hear Vincent
Well,
Price.
that'd be a little more higher pitched. I don't know if I could do that because he has, like, I don't know.
Okay.
You don't try to do Vincent.
I
no
don't think
offense,
I can.
but just don't.
I don't
try.
want to butcher it.
Don't
Yeah.
try it.
Yeah.
Alrighty, guys, that's going to do it for this episode of the Red Moon Podcast. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Until next time, I'm one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host,
Sean Sebastian.
and...
Boris Karloff. I don't know that fell. That's what I was thinking of in the last one.
Don't do him either.
Yeah.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. For more reviews, previous podcast shows, and everything Red Moon, visit our website, redmoonproductions.com. You can also like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter by searching for Red Moon Productions, LLC. We'll see you at the movies.